Greetings, YouTube. I apologize for the poor lighting, but I didn't want to disturb the cat. We do have a little natural lighting behind me, so I guess that's better than nothing. Today's story came out of last month, and it's from Utah. A program in Salt Lake City decided that it would be smarter and more humane to spend $11,000 per year each to house 17 chronically homeless people and provide them with social workers than it would be to waste the average of $16,670 a year per person to imprison them and treat them in emergency rooms. As Nation of Change points out, this common sense, humane, and economically sound way of dealing with homelessness works, unlike the savage approaches taken by other cities such as Waikiki Rep. Ton Boker, who smashed homeless people's carts with a sledgehammer, or the cities like Tampa, which banned feeding homeless people outright. Not only has some cities banned the act of feeding a homeless person, so if you are a person who has a home and you want to show compassion, sympathy, and empathy for a fellow human being and feed a homeless person, there are cities where you can be arrested for that. But Florida upped the ante recently and actually made it illegal in some places to shelter yourself with a tarp or blanket. So if you try to keep rain off your head, you could be arrested if you're using a tarp or a blanket. I guess if you have an umbrella that shows that you are a home person, you have a home, I guess, that's allowed. But if you're trying to shelter yourself from the rain because you have no home, well, that's an arresting. But here we have an example in Salt Lake City where it was less expensive, more humane, and more just to give these people housing without strings attached. They're trying to transition them back into society at large. But even if they don't make that transition, they're not going to lose their housing. And that is what I would love to see happen across America. I would love to see apartment buildings opened up that have a very dorm-like structure. So you'd walk in and there'd be a room, you know, probably 8-10 feet wide, with maybe a little wider, maybe 12 feet wide, with a bed or actually on a platform so you could use the space under it for a single person. A long desk with drawers, bookshelves, a classic single dorm room. My wife had one that was wonderful. It really had a very comfortable feel to it, but it was very simple. It was very basic, and it's the kind of thing that I think we could build on a large scale, or convert existing buildings to in a large scale to help house the homeless. They'd have communal bathrooms, community kitchens, and if you need a slightly larger units, make them a little wider. Put a queen size bed. Put double stack them. Put bunk beds, but they're queen size, so you could put 2 kids and 2 adults in the same room. Humans have lived in tighter quarters and live in tighter quarters than that in the real world for millennia. So we can accommodate them in the real world here out in the civilized West. There isn't any reason any human being in the United States is homeless. And the kind of housing I'm describing is not luxury housing. This is basic human habitation. This is shelter from the weather and the cold. This is a place to keep yourself safe behind a locked door so you can sleep safely, where you're not going to have to be worried about being attacked or raped or robbed while you're sleeping in public, or roused and arrested for the simple thing that you have no place to live. Poverty is not a crime, and we as a society in America need to stop demonizing homeless people and the poor. And that is what we do. We demonize them. And we do it because if we align ourselves, if we sympathize with the wealthy, we feel a sense of comfort. We cleave to the wealthy as a society, because if we do that, we feel that we will sympathetically be drawn to what they are, which is wealthy, comfortable, and safe. And if we sympathize and empathize with the poor, we put ourselves into a place of vulnerability. If we ally ourselves with the vulnerable, we feel vulnerable. It reminds us that all of this can go away in a heartbeat. That just because you have safety now does not mean you will have safety in the future. So we cleave and sympathize to the wealthy because they've got safety. They're going to be safe forever. We've convinced ourselves. That isn't true either, but we've convinced ourselves it is. So if we sympathize with the poor, well, they're already not safe. We don't want to sympathize with them. We don't want to align ourselves or empathize with them. Because if we do that, we put our own psyches at risk. We make ourselves realize that, but for the grace of God, there go I. And we don't want to do that. We need to protect our egos. We need to protect our psyches from the reality because it's so ugly and so harsh. So we sympathize with the wealthy and endorse them and put them on pedestals and worship them and give them the things that they desire because we think someday I will be one of them. And that's a lie we tell ourselves. And so we cut programs for the poor because they deserve it. They're both poor because they're wrong, they're bad. Because if we do that, we say, I'm not wrong, I'm not bad, so I'm never going to be that. I'm never going to be that poor person. But you're wrong. You're a heartbeat away from that. Everything you have could be taken from you. And we need a social safety net in America, in the world, that makes sure that no human being goes without shelter, without food, without health care, without a basic education. So that when that bad thing happens, and it will happen to some of us, we do not end up on the streets without a home. Humanity works. Humanity can work together to be humane. We can do this. But so far, we have chosen not to. And we need to do it together because collectively we can do far more than we can individually. Salt Lake City is putting $11,000 per person into this program. Who among us has $11,000 to spare? No one. But if we take a few pennies out of each taxpayer's money, boom! There's your $11,000. If we take a few pennies out of every dollar appropriated by the military, boom! There's health care for everyone. If we actually make businesses pay an effective tax rate of 35% as opposed to what they currently pay, which is in some cases less than zero taxes, they get subsidies. We subsidize the oil industry in America. That's insanity. We need to be taking care of these homeless people and the homeless people of the future and create a safety net where we will be safe. Where we will never have to worry ever for 1 second of our lives. From cradle to grave, never have to be concerned about the fact that you will end up homeless and hungry and sick and ignorant. And we can do this. But instead, we sympathize and ally ourselves with the wealthy who don't need our help. And we demonize the poor. We are better than this. We can be better than this. And this program shows how it works. We can make this program work everywhere. We can build the buildings that need to be built. We can convert the buildings that need to be converted. We can make sure that we treat every person with humanity and dignity and respect. That we empathize and sympathize and have compassion for everyone. We can do this. All we have to do is choose to do it.